Hi there, I'm Danita Harris. I am the co-founder of the Virtual NIL Conference. This year was our first year, and wow, what a way to set the tone for years to come as we continue bringing you amazing information that helps you go through the process of this new NIL era. Listen, I want to take time to thank you, the participants, for being so engaging and so willing to learn. I want to thank the sponsors because without you, none of this would have been possible. And last but not least, I want to thank the speakers because they brought the dynamic and engaging information that is going to help you navigate these murky, muddy NIL waters so that you can get to the money faster. I can't thank everyone enough for your participation. You're about to see the recast. You missed all the little good Q&A sessions from the live versions, but at least you still get to take some meat away. And so my co-founder and I, Morris Grooms, want to thank you. In addition, you also missed getting a free copy of our book, The College Athlete's Guide, 9 Ways to Make Money in the NIL Era. But don't worry, it's still available in the Amazon bookstore with a new supplemental pamphlet, 50 Ways to Make Money in the NIL Era. We hope you enjoy this recast, and hopefully next year we'll see you live as well. Welcome to this segment of the 2022 Virtual NIL Awards, brought to you by Blank Rome. And I'm joined today with Mr. Cody Wilcoxon, and he is an attorney at Blank Rome. And so instead of me fumbling through what Blank Rome is and how they can help you with all of your legal affairs, I'm going to give him the mic for 30 seconds and let him explain exactly what Blank Rome can do for you.
Thank you so much, Danita. We're thrilled to work with you on this seminar. Blank Rome is a law firm, national-based law firm with about 650 attorneys across the country. Specifically to the NIL space, we have been working with universities on providing educational resources to help student athletes make the best decisions in entering NIL deals. And we also have been working with some of the marketplaces and brands as they start to wade into the NIL space and make sure they're putting together good agreements, complying with state laws, conference and institutional policies, the NCAA policy, of course, and making sure they're entering into agreements with athletes to put the athletes and the brands in the best position and not jeopardize anybody's eligibility, not take away any inappropriate rights. So we're just making sure everyone is acting safely and smartly within the NIL marketplace.
Well, that sounds definitely like something that everyone needs, not just in the NIL space, but if you have a business, you need legal representation to make sure you're entering in the contracts correctly, et cetera, et cetera. So what makes Blank Rome unique from other big firms? Because I heard you say you have 650, that's a lot, nationwide. So whether you're in California, which I know you personally were the other week, or in Pennsylvania, which is where you are now, to New York, all the way down, I'm sure, to Florida and in between, you guys have a lot of territory you cover. What makes you all different from, let's say, maybe a boutique firm that's catering to NIL space?
Yeah, one of the things that makes Blank Rome really unique in this space is that we are a full-service national firm. So we have, an award-winning intellectual property group all over the country, and litigators and mergers and transactions and corporate formation attorneys, and we even have maritime and matrimonial attorneys that can deal with family issues and international issues and all sorts of things. And I combine those two groups together, which is funny because they have nothing to do with each other. But we have attorneys that do sort of everything and anything. So when you hire a Blank Rome attorney, you hire me, who by trade is a litigator and someone that deals with fighting about terms in a contract. You are hiring the brain power of all 650 attorneys at Blank Rome and getting the resources. So when I'm working on an NIL project, I am pulling in the knowledge of our deal makers and our intellectual property group to make sure all of that is situated. And so it's not just one attorney, you're hiring all the attorneys and all the resources of the firm. And since we have the ability to work in all sorts of groups, if you have an issue that pops up related to you want to start an LLC to kind of reduce your liability because you're going to give lessons or you're going to run a camp, we have ability to have someone come in, help you work on getting those papers filed with the Secretary of State, getting that all up and running and making sure you're taking care of yourself. So we are full service, top to bottom, and can kind of take care of someone's needs. And we also bring that perspective into each project that we're working on.
Well, I don't think that marriage is too far off, because sometimes you see the collegiate athletes getting engaged, very young in college sports. So they might need help with that. But I mean, that's a lot that you guys do. And so from that, I don't want people to feel intimidated about the process. I think people feel intimidated when they hear attorneys because of attorneys' fees. So what would it take to work with? Do you have different brackets of working with NIL because they're collegiate students as opposed to working with a more established client? How does that work to help break down some of that fear that they might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've really been trying to do is partner with universities and institutions so that we can provide our resources to athletes across the board. So we're not going in and specifically looking at the terms of your specific NIL deal, but we're giving you educational resources that give you, larger concepts, take home, papers and things like that coming out of our seminars where, these are the things I need to look for. These are red flags when I'm looking at an NIL agreement that's presented to me that if I see this, I need to talk to someone in my athletic department. I need to talk to an attorney. I need to talk to an agent or a business manager or a family member with a little more experience in this that you have as a college student prior to entering into that agreement. So we want to make sure student athletes have the tools to review these agreements and make smart decisions and know when they need to ask for help. Know when it's worth a couple $100s to have an attorney look at their contract.
Right. I think that's fantastic because it does give a very much of an entry point then for them to not feel so intimidated and say, oh my gosh, I need an attorney. That's going to cost me thousands of dollars that I don't have. And that information is readily available for them to take home and, like you say, utilize and then say, maybe this is a bit out of my stretch. So let me pick up the phone and call Blank Rome. Let me call Cody and find out how to better navigate this. At still an affordable cost as well. So that's fantastic for you potential NIL business owners, student athletes that are out there. So what makes the NIL experience for legal pitfalls?
Yeah, so there's just a lot of unknown. Obviously, NIL is a concept and now it's become very associated with college athletes, but name, image, and likeness is a concept we've been dealing with for, decades in the United States. Many states have NIL laws. There is no federal, right of publicity at the moment. So it's making sure student athletes know what that entails. It's not just your picture. It's not just your name. Examples of really famous NIL are like the number 23 on a red and black basketball jersey. Mm-hmm. Every single person knows what that means, even if it's just a number and a color scheme. That is a protectable likeness. It would be a number 2 on a white pinstripe baseball jersey. It's the same concept. So knowing that you have these things and they're protectable also allows you to know when to give permission and when to not give permission. So when athletes are trying to commercialize their name, image, and likeness, the big pitfall that we're concerned about is the contract. And for us, that means the student athlete taking the time and really taking ownership over reviewing that agreement. And we like to put it into 5 buckets of things that a student athlete should look for. So the first one is, what are the rights you are allowing them to use? Can they use your name? Can they use pictures of you? Are you going to do a photo shoot with them where they can use those pictures? Can they use your likeness? What are the things you are giving up? That's the first big thing. And every student athlete needs to know exactly what it is the contract is asking them to give up. The second thing is, what is the things that you're giving up? What are they allowed to do with it? So we talk a lot about context. If it is a sports drink company, they can have a picture of you drinking that drink and use it in certain ways, but are they allowed to modify your image? Can they Photoshop it? Those are things we are concerned about, and those are things that, by and large, you shouldn't be allowing brands to do. They shouldn't be able to modify your image without your permission. Then sort of the third bucket is, what is the time commitment? What are they asking you to do? Student athletes are incredibly busy people. You not only have your commitment to your team and your training, both what's required, and most student athletes are very driven people. They're in the gym extra, they're doing all sorts of things. They also have their schoolwork, right? You're attending class, you're doing your homework, you're doing projects, you're doing assignments. You're also a college student, so you're socializing, you have friends, you're doing all those things. You need to make sure you can balance all of those commitments together. So you need to make sure the time commitment that's being requested of you is reasonable. You can't infringe on any of your required activities, certainly any practices or games or team meetings. You can't miss to do NIL work. You also can't miss class, right? So make sure you're knowing what commitment is and what they're requiring you to do. The fourth bucket that we put is, what are you getting in return, right? So the basic one is cash, right? You're getting cash compensation. You're going to be an independent contractor. You're going to have to pay taxes on that money. They're not withholding taxes for you. So as soon as you get that paycheck, you need to set aside some of that for Uncle Sam. If you're getting merchandise or you're getting a car, those are probably very popular deals right now. You are going to pay taxes on the value of those items that you're receiving, even though you're not getting the cash. So if you get a car for 6 months, this has been a very popular NIL agreement with football and basketball players, is you get a new car to drive for 6 months. Well, at the end of the year, that car dealership is going to put a value of what a lease for 6 months would have been, and you're going to get a 1099 form to you that says you received this amount of money, even though all you did was get the keys to a car, and you're going to have to pay taxes on that amount. So making sure you're understanding what you're getting in return. And then the final thing, and one of the most important things, is, do you understand how you can get out of this deal? If something goes wrong, do you have the right to terminate that agreement, whether you've done the work or not, right? If you get out at the very beginning and they haven't paid you anything, is that acceptable? Or if you've done half of the work, or if it's a 3 social media post agreement and you've made 2 of the posts, but something happens and you want to get out of the agreement, can you? Even if you have to give back some of the money, you need to make sure you have the right to terminate, even if that's with in writing, even if that means giving back some of the money. You want to have those rights. You also want to know how you can enforce your side of the contract. So we look for things like choice of law or jurisdictional things that says, hey, you have to sue in this forum. So if you are a student athlete and sitting in Pennsylvania where I am, and you sign an agreement with a Florida-based company and it says you can only sue us in the state of Florida, well, that's really difficult, right? You're sitting in Pennsylvania, you're a 21-year-old student, you need to hire a Florida attorney to file a lawsuit in Florida court. You'll have to travel to Florida to attend hearings, and they can compel you to do depositions there. And it just makes it very difficult to enforce those rights. So you want to make sure that you have the right to sue in the state you are sitting in and working in and providing the value to them in. We also talk about things like arbitration clauses, but those are kind of the 5 key things: is what are the rights you're giving up? What can the brand do with your name, image, and likeness? What is the time commitment? What are they asking you to do specifically? What are you getting in return? And how can you get out of the deal? Those are the 5 pitfalls. And if you understand that, you are in a good place.
Yes, you are in a very good place. I think because sometimes the student athlete can be on the shy side, especially, and having those enforcement, right? Those boundaries that are established are really good. But also bringing back to my first question, which was, what makes you unique? I think that's part of what makes you unique, is the fact that if you are having to sue someone in Florida, but you're in currently Pennsylvania, that it's a phone call, right, for you and your team, as opposed to if you're working maybe with a smaller boutique firm, then you're going to have to find someone in Florida that you can, vet, and they may or may not know someone, your local person that is handling your case. Which brings me to the question of, so how does that work with residency, where their college residency is versus their home residency?
Yeah, for us, I think we would advise student athletes that you want to be able to enforce your rights where you're going to school, because that's where you're going to be spending a majority of your time. That's where you're going to be making these posts by and large. Sure, if you're home in California over the holidays and you're making some social media posts, yes, you're doing it there, but really the value you're generating, the hard work you've done as a student athlete, where you're spending 9 or 10 months of each calendar year is where you're going to school. So that's where it's going to be easiest for you to enforce your rights. If that's something you wanted, you said, I am a California resident, I really want the ability to be able to enforce this agreement in California, you could ask for that. I think that would be an unusual situation. We typically push for it to be where you are attending school. That's where the agreement is really happening. That's where the performance of the agreement is happening, and that's where it makes the most sense for both sides to litigate. I know companies always want to litigate at home, which in the scenario we're talking about is Florida. But in these cases, when you're talking about student athletes, the right thing is to litigate that where you're asking the student athlete to perform the contract.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So take us through the process of working with your firm.
Sure. So, so we go in and we would speak to the universities, and part of our offering to universities is some follow-up time and access to attorneys for a period of time after the fact, because as you can imagine, student athletes sitting in an auditorium or in a conference are less likely to raise their hand and ask questions. So if they say, hey, we listened to this attorney talk and it gave, we were wondering about this, or we're kind of dealing with this issue and we want to know more about it generally, they give us a call, and when we start to talk through, they explain to us kind of what the issue is. We find the right person within the firm that has that expertise and start getting answers to those questions. Specific to your question about a student athlete, we typically don't work directly with the student athletes. We work more with the universities. But if a student athlete were to approach us and say, hey, I want to run these camps, or I'm going to give lessons, and I want to protect my personal liability, shield my personal liability, what we would do is we would sit down with them and talk about kind of what their budget is, what they're imagining this looking like, what type of protections they're looking for, how they intend to sort of run this business. And we would put together corporate formation documents with them, an operating agreement, and making sure they're getting their business set up correctly, because a major pitfall is you can set up an LLC, but if you just run it then as Cody Wilcoxon and you're not running it as a business, it's just you, well, you're actually not then protected because you have not run a business. You have just run it as your person, even though you filed these papers. So we want to make sure the student athlete understands that they need to separate, they need to run this as a business to be able to have the benefit of the protections and the decrease of liability, because unfortunately, in the litigious society we live in, if you are a college basketball player and you're running a basketball camp back home over the holidays with 25 young people and someone gets hurt, you don't want to find yourself on the end of a large lawsuit personally.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in and a lot of information. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place to obviously find us and find all of my contact information at blankrome.com. You can see all of our attorney profiles. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter at @CWilcoxon, where I'm posting, NIL and other sports law related content. Also my own just personal musings as well. So we are accessible. My direct line and my direct email is available on the website. So if people have questions, they want to reach out, they want to start a conversation. If you're a business looking to wade into the NIL space and you don't know exactly what you want to do, you don't have a contract, you don't have in-house attorneys that you're working with, we're happy to guide and counsel you in entering in that space, because there is a great opportunity. Student athletes are going to be the greatest influencers in the marketplace. They're engaging, they're great, driven young people that care about these products and want to work with these businesses. And they're so excited to be able to use these rights and make some money. And I think every business would be well suited to work with student athletes to promote their products.
Thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate all the great legal information that you gave us. I look forward to seeing more of what you all are doing with universities. Again, if you have a business or you want a business and you need someone to reach out to for legal questions and help, you can contact Cody at blankrome. That's blankrome.com, BLANKROME.com. And we thank you for your participation in this particular segment.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here.
Welcome to this segment of the 2022 Virtual NIL Conference, brought to you by Millions. That's millions.co. And today I am joined with Miss Mandy of Millions. I like that, M of M, Mandy of Millions. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about the company and why you need to consider using them as part of your social media platform booster, I'll call it. So Mandy, give us the 30-second rundown of Millions and what you all can do for this NIL athlete.
Yeah, so essentially Millions is here to help the athletes build their own brand and connect with fans. So I know a lot of the NIL athletes are trying to find ways to get these big deals, get these big sponsorships. So essentially we're trying to set them up for success. So by having your own brand that you take very seriously, take professionally, that's going to help you attract bigger sponsors. So we do that through creating merchandise. So like gear for the athletes. We also do that through allowing fans to ask questions, and the athletes will answer with a personalized video. And then we do some watch parties. So the athletes get paid to watch sporting events with their fans.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Now that's definitely unique. So why is Millions important to both the masses, and what makes it unique for the NIL user?
So for the masses, I mean, for the fans are loving it because it's like a really cool way to connect with an athlete, right? Like think the Super Bowl, we had about 20 NFL legends watching the Super Bowl with their fans. So like, how cool is it to be like sitting there asking questions to someone who's already been there, done that, and just getting a whole different perspective on the game. So that's, I think, such a cool piece. Also, just a lot of the NIL athletes, especially on the merch side of things, like they're able to get that like community support. How cool is it to like be playing a game? I'm an athlete too. I'm a boxer. I was on the platform before I actually joined the company, but it was so cool to like have people show up wearing my merch to cheer me on, right? It makes them feel like they're a part of your journey. They really want to like help support you. And that's just a small way that they can do that.
Come back to the NFL legends sitting and watching the games with these people. Like, how incredible is that? That's just, I mean, I can imagine with your little glass of whiskey and your stogie and your, that's what I think about NFL players, like they're sitting around, like the brouhaha of it all, but it's almost like they're literally sitting on your couch and watching the NFL game or the Super Bowl with you. How many fans can participate in something like that at one time?
So the most we've had right now is a few hundred. So it really depends. Like some of them are smaller knit. We try to have like multiple events, like for a big thing like the Super Bowl, we had multiple. So you kind of picked your favorite athlete out of that group and then watched. So it kind of like spread that out a little bit. So you had a little bit more time with the athletes. But yeah, like it's such a cool thing. Like we're working with athletes at all stages of their career, right? So when they're in that NIL phase, that's when they're coming in. That's when we want to work with them to help build their brand. We're working with them when they're professional. And then we're also working with them when they retire. It's like, hey, if you want to like make some extra income, here's a really cool way to be able to do that while you're still watching something you love and, sharing the knowledge that you've learned throughout your career.
Yeah, and you've hit on the head that I've consistently said across the board, which is NIL is so much more than collegiate sports. It is literally the entire duration. This is now what we've been seeing on the back end, right, which is the post game, the retired athlete. Now on the front end of the game, where you can enjoy hanging out or that monetization piece with your favorite athletes up front. And my mind immediately goes to baseball. I worked with a lot of baseball players, and that's the kind when they're in like the independent leagues now, and they're in search for a little bit of extra bump in their paychecks, a little bit of extra money to have in their pockets, as all sports are, but for whatever reason, that's just ringing in my ears. That really comes to mind, where these young men can now sit, or women in softball can now sit and participate in the World Series with just watching the game with fans that are local fans or back home fans or whomever. So I think that's a really unique experience too, because it makes their world a lot smaller, so they can be anywhere in the world but connect with everyone in the world. Exactly. So I guess I just kind of answered my own question, but I'll ask it anyway. How does Millions help the average player with their NIL?
Yeah, so we have a really cool system right now. So basically the athletes, want to start building their brand, want to start working with us. It's completely free for the athletes. We don't charge them anything. We do some really fun things where we connect with them as an ad partner as well. So whenever they create a profile, we actually help promote their page and drive more traffic to help them get sales as well. We even have, internal writers, we have podcasts, a whole bunch of things we're working on right now in terms of like trying to get them some media attention as well. So everything we do obviously spins back to how do we drive more traffic to their page for watch streams and merch or our AMA videos. So it's really interesting. I mean, anytime the athletes have big moments in their career, we call them like in the moment merchandise opportunities, right? So think, when the Canadian women's soccer team, right, beat the US, sorry, but I'm in Canada, I have to call it out. At the Olympics, and it's like, there was like so many people saying like, where's the merch for these girls? Like there's nothing out there. So our company is the type of company that would be able to take a moment like that, have our designers create something like within hours, and then have it up so that they can monetize that and really take advantage of those big opportunities.
And that's such a big point, and it's a consistent point, another one that's been consistent through all of NIL, which is this is really a gem for female athletes to really elevate their game, elevate their visibility, and overall elevate their paycheck, because we all know the discrepancies and disparities of the pay, but this really helps to elevate them and put them on a better pay projection than what they would have without. So tell me the type of athletes that you work with. I noticed on your website, it was more in the US, what we consider the second tier type of sports, which would be like your boxing and your all your motorsports, all of the other ones. In the US, we're partial to football and basketball and baseball, right? Yeah. So talk to us about the athletes that you work with.
So we started in the combat sport world, which is why you'll see a lot more of those athletes right now. So any of like the UFC stars, PFL, etc. We're working a lot with those athletes. But our second biggest group of athletes is football. We signed a deal with the NFL Alumni Association, so we're now working with all of them. We're also working with the MLB Players Association now. So we're really kind of breaking into some of those markets. We've got some really exciting basketball athletes that are coming in, some of the biggest names in NCAA that'll be announced really soon. So yeah, we're always open. We're completely, as long as the athletes are either, at that elite level, NCAA, Olympic, pro, semi-pro, those are the athletes that we are going to work with. And we really want to keep our platform exclusive to that level of athlete.
So take me through the process as if I am an athlete and I'm coming to your site. I know I heard you say it's free for athletes, which is amazing. Yeah. So take me through that process and how I don't know anything. I don't know what I want to do. How do I come to you? First of all, how do I find you? Let's start there. And how do I walk me through that process of how do I work with you?
Yeah, so athletes can find us at millions.co. So right on our website, there's a button there to sign up. You can kind of browse through, see what some of the other profiles look like, see some of the things that we have to offer. But again, it comes down to 3 products. So it's either merchandise, AMA Ask Me Anything videos, or the watch stream product. So those are kind of our 3 things. And you have to have at least one of those items on your profile to have a live profile. So basically you would hit the sign up button, sign up as an athlete. There's a bit of information that you need to fill out. Obviously you need to have like a picture, a little bit of a bio. And then you would just need to let us know, like, do you want to do AMA? Do you want to do merch? If you want to do merch, we have this really cool feature called Design Labs that actually takes you through like some ideas of like, maybe you don't know exactly what you want your logo to look like or this design to look like. We have like some samples and some different things that we can show you to start get some some ideas going. And then the more that we can get like detail from the athletes, we want to make it perfect for them because we want it to represent them and their brand. They submit something and then we start creating. We come back to the athletes once it's ready and it's approved. We build out their e-commerce store essentially. And then it goes live, and then the athletes, all they have to do is just start posting about it. We're going to share about it. We're going to create some like content for them. We'll share it with them that they can kind of like help boost their page. Like I said, we'll connect with them as an ad partner, try to drive more traffic to their page as well. And then if they're interested in watch parties, as opportunities come up, we might just reach out and say, hey, would you be interested in doing this event? This is how much we'll pay you. And if they just want to do one on their own, they can do one at any time as well.
That's good to know. So the design aspect of everything, I'm assuming you guys have on staff design team, but who is the owner? Who then becomes the owner of that initial design metrics?
The athlete, yeah.
With them, or is that an in-house product?
No, it's we don't keep any ownership on design. So anything we create is the athletes, they own that 100%. And we're also not exclusive. So we do not try to tie the athletes down anyway. We understand that athletes have so many opportunities and we don't want to like restrict them from those opportunities. So athletes can work with us, have merch on our platform, but then if they also have their own website or they want to sell somewhere else, like absolutely go 100% and do that. We're really just here to support the athletes.
Yeah, but why would you? It's completely free on your profile. Like it just is a no-brainer to me why people wouldn't want to sign up and be a part of your community, being that they get a free service, use of the service, as well as the support is what I keep hearing. What I keep hearing you reiterate is the support of, we're going to help you advertise. We're going to help you push back, because obviously if they're out there and they have more people coming on, then everybody's making money off of that. So that's really good. And I'm just thinking of, some of these kids on the collegiate side, maybe not on the pro side, retired, but on the collegiate side, they're just getting their feet wet, don't really know what to do, don't know really how far out there they want to be in terms of their anonymity, or, how big of a social media presence they may want. This might be something that's a really good piece that they have more control over, to where maybe I'm only going to do watch parties, or maybe I'll do merchandise, and it gives them a little baby step, or let's take it all in if they want to. So that's really good.
Yeah. And we honestly, we have a wide range of athletes as well. Like we have athletes on our platform with millions of followers that do really well, but then we also have athletes with under 1,000 followers that do really well, because maybe they come from smaller communities, like everyone in their circle really wants to support them and buys a shirt or whatever, right? So it works both ways. And I think, no matter kind of where they are in their career, there's always going to be people around them that want to support them and want to show that love.
And I love that piece, that there's something for everyone. This is why you need to get on the platform if you're an athlete immediately and go check out millions.co. Thank you so much, Mandy, for interviewing with us today in your segment.
Thank you. To the 2022 Virtual NIL Conference, and this segment is brought to you by Chat in the Garden. We're here with Miss Monique Aj Smith. The first word that came to mind was legend. This young lady has been around for quite some time and has been doing some quite amazing things very quietly. You've probably not really heard about her unless you're running in the right circles, I'll say, with all the great athletic directors and NCAA committees that she's been a part of. I read through her resume and it is rather robust. So instead of me trying to fumble through it, I'm going to give her 30 seconds to just introduce herself to you and give a little snippet of some of the work that you've been doing, please.
Well, thank you so much, Danita. I'm so happy to be here with you. We've been connected for some time now, so it's great to see you virtually. So this
Yes.
is wonderful for me. So I'm Monique Aj Smith. I'm a leadership strategist for athletic departments, sport organizations, and individuals who wish to advance in athletic administration. For the last 8 seasons, I've hosted a podcast called A Chat in the Garden.
Yay.
With Monique Aj Smith, where I interview African-American female athletic administrators in athletic administration and sports business. And so I have ventured off into some couple other things. I started a magazine, and but the magazine really was to teach folks in higher ed that you got to learn how to package your specialized knowledge. So that's been my main thing of recent. And I am an adjunct at Hampton University, which has prepared me for this discussion today.
Yes. Let's go back real quick to the magazine. I see it back there in the background. Significance magazine is it? There it is, a copy of it. And you can also sign up for that. Tell us where to get both that. And then I recently signed up to receive the Chat in the Garden recast, the replays of that. So tell everybody where they can get your information.
Well, I will say you can go to my website, www.seedsofempowerment.info. That's the name of my company, my consulting. It's seedsofempowerment.info. My store is payhip.com/Seeds of Empowerment.
Okay.
So you can get all of the magazines, and plus I have a book that has my athletic administrative journey.
Yes.
This is also in the store. The t-shirts are in the store.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's where you find that. And also, if you are so inclined to just only want to shop on Amazon, this is the 3rd issue. All 3 issues are on Amazon. Just type in significance in athletics and sports. And it features Black women in athletic administration and all the different roles.
Yes.
And I really like to get this in the bulk to the next generation so they're ready to see all that they can be in athletic administration.
Yes. And that comes to, I guess, maybe me asking my 3rd question first. I have a tendency to do that, which is on your legacy, because like I say, I mean, you have a stellar resume when you go back and see all of the work that you've done from being on NCAA committees to your work now at Hampton and everything in between with African-American athletic directors. What legacy are you hoping to leave when you decide that you want to exit one day and actually retire?
Well, let's be clear. That's not going to happen.
I heard that.
I'm 54 now. And hey, we always need to have additional income streams, more than one income.
Yes. So maybe building out more of that significance magazine and keep the Chat in the Garden going. Yes, because I think it's so pivotal for women in sports and women of color in sports to see that leadership level. So talk about how the NIL has actually impacted directly the athletic departments and how the functionality of that is going right now.
Well, let's be honest, it's a big question mark.
Yes.
I mean, I'm glad you didn't ask me to do this in the fall. Because it was a more of a gigantic question mark.
Yes.
And ironically, last fall, my class, Collegiate Athletic Administration at Hampton University, I usually teach my students about compliance. And usually it's about recruiting rules and so they can learn the bylaws, not necessarily the exact wording, but where to go in the NCAA manual. Because again, I'm all about teaching my students to become employable versus having a great 4.0 and not being able to position themselves for entry-level position. So most of the time, at small institutions, compliance is an entry-level position, a GA position. So they have some experiences with that. But let's be honest, I was held at bay because every time I would say something, well, that used to be a violation. Well, this used to be a violation. And so I said, you know what we're going to do? Everybody in this class is going to learn name, image, and likeness. So we began with pick a university, watch how they institute that, and I look at it from what is missing and what you can bring to the table. And to be honest, and I felt really good about it. By the end of the semester, I learned about 20 different institutions, how they were, going about it. But one of the things, I was a connoisseur of who was doing it, because let's be clear, the NCAA took their hands off of it.
Yes,
They put
they
it
did.
all on the state.
Yes,
okay?
they did.
And so you didn't have a consistent baseline. All you knew were you cannot go against your state's bylaws. Now, I must admit that I'm really proud of being in the state of Virginia, because Carla Williams, woman of color, athletic director, University of Virginia, in the fall went to the governor of Virginia and said, hey, we can't wait till January when you all meet General Assembly. We need you to go ahead and make a law out of it now. So that's what leadership is.
Yes.
It's taking charge, speaking truth to power, and creating a legacy, not just for yourself. So she didn't do it just for UVA. She did it for the whole state of Virginia. And so that's kind of where we are, depending upon what type of leadership you have in your state, what kind of leaders you have in your athletic department, is how you look at it. So a couple of ways. I mean, those that are smart and embrace it,
right,
because it becomes individual marketing pieces for your university.
Yes.
Versus the other who say, oh no, that's going to interfere with what we have going on. Coaches feel like it's a distraction.
Yes.
All of that. Now, that was the fall. I think people are catching on because it's not going away. But I will tell you, here's the interesting thing. I think maybe 2 to 3 years ago, Bill Roden of the Undefeated, ESPN, he had one of my students on his team, and it was like, Miss Smith, can you get on ESPN radio with us? And I was like, okay, talk about what? Well, we want to talk about the WNBA. I was, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this name, image, and likeness. And they were like, huh?
Yes.
And it wasn't even on the radar. And I mean, my issue has always been, if we're in higher ed and we have our kids do internships, learn through the process, why are we saying they can't be entrepreneurial? Because the world is entrepreneurial. Yes. So why aren't you allowing the athletes to use their skills? Whatever it is. Right. Yes. not even, like you're a kicker and you want to, this is what happened too. This is what brought all our attention to it. You're a kicker and you on YouTube showing the best technique to kick. Yes. And that's how it all started.
Yes.
But let's just say that you were a fashion designer and you want to put your fashion on social media. Well, the smart ones went ahead and did it and used a cartoon as their face or didn't use their name.
Right.
But you're hindering the learning process.
Yes.
Because as you know, entrepreneurship is a process.
Absolutely.
It's a learning process. And this is where you definitely learn that there are learnings and not losses, because you're going to have a lot of them. So if you can shape it that way. And so that's the part I was grasping, stop hindering that. Now, I have not been one about the endorsements of a car, that kind of, and I will tell you that having 2 semesters of this, I've heard, I'm not trying to hear it, but, like passing through my ear, that in recruiting processes, they're offering the deals. And I'm like, let's not go against what we're saying. It's supposed to be independent and not part of the university. And my student yesterday actually told me about Adidas. Adidas is having and I meant to read it all up before I came on today. But it's a perfect, but again, even the students are going like, okay, what's the best deal? Now here's something that no one has talked about, I've heard, but we talked about it in class, because I teach psychosociology of sport. So, the quarterback gets a deal, but does somebody on the O-line get the deal?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And how does that affect the chemistry of the team?
Right.
And so I got one of my students doing that as his research.
That's been a really hot topic of how it affects team dynamics when one is out earning the other, which is then why companies like Adidas are coming with a more blanketed approach, and they have to understand the maneuvers that they need to take. And like you say, it is an educational process. And so my opinion is, if we're out here teaching entrepreneurship and having entrepreneurial degrees, what better time than combining it with the NIL than to allow them to utilize the business department and that entrepreneurial department to help catapult them? Because let's be honest, some of these kids, it's a significant, and the key word of the day is significance. We're going to come back to the magazine, but that just kept ringing in my ear as I was preparing for your interview. But it's significant that they get that education and understanding, as well as it is significant that they have the support. Because talk about that significance of how all of these pieces are coming together. And is it still, I know it's still discombobulated and it's just, we're disfigured. We have an arm over here and a leg over here, and nobody is really talking about it. So what's the significance of the impact that it will eventually make on the kids' lives and their parents and their transition from the sports arena into their next phase in life?
Well, first, I just want to clarify, the NCAA took their hands out of it because of the fact it was so fluid that they decided to change their constitution. So they're in the midst of changing how they do business. And so have caused the NCAA to change their business.
Yes.
Okay. And number 2, to accelerate that, we would, you take 4 years or 2, the one and dones, to teach them how to go professional. Because even if we become professional, you're going to need to have individuals in your camp to have an understanding. And the institutions can, have a class, but they can't help you select those people. They only can't even tell you if the deal is good or bad. They can only tell you whether there's a conflict with what they're doing. So you're going to need to have some individuals. And so that's going to bring up who's going to do the clearinghouse to say anybody is really aware of, certified to name, image, and likeness. So
is there going to be a clearinghouse? Because as you know, for the NBA, there is not a clearinghouse to be an agent other than you sitting for the exam and taking the test, unlike the NFL, where you have to go through their system and pay their fees to become an agent. So it should be interesting as to how that even trickles down for collegiate football players and how that transition will happen. But so from go ahead.
And that's why I train all my students in that class, because almost every institution, Power 5, is going to have one area. And so you can actually say that you have become vested in it because you learn like 20 institutions and how they're doing it. Now,
Right.
I will say, I did have on my show a young lady that works for a company, I think it's called Influencer,
Mm-hmm.
that Power 5 institutions have come in partnership with to, I guess, flesh out the deals. But again, those folks are working for the institution and not the kid,
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I
And then
think, and you kind of alluded to it. I've been around this business for 30 years.
mm-hmm.
So I was around before there was a NCAA clearinghouse, now the Eligibility Center.
Yes.
So back then, you could certify your players based on your admissions policies, which became a problem because everybody had different type, and
Right.
you might be able to go to this school, but you can get into this school,
Right.
and you had a lot of special cases, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they began to institute that, then you start seeing the NCAA hire compliance people. Because when I started out in 1990, there were no compliance people at one institution.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, and each institution did their own thing. So you could play at a 2.0. Well, maybe it was the GPA was the same, but the entry level into school and being able to compete was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I have that history, I kind of have a feel about what is going to be. Before you should be a coach, an AD, and trainers weren't even full time. Sports information director, which is what I began my first job, was like, ooh, a new position. I was the first full-time sports information director woman in the CIAA, and that was 1990. So I have a strong feeling that there will be coordinators of this, especially the Power Fives, and it will eventually trickle down. At least in every conference office, there will be, because you really can't pile that on the compliance, because it might fall under there in the beginning, and then as it blooms up, it will be there. And that's why I was trying to change my students to be like, see if this is something that catches your eye. Because here's another thing. And I pick with my students, because when you tell students, ask students what you want to do, after college, I want to make money. And I was like, but what, you can make money now.
Right.
And I just said something very simple. I was like, so you got your hair braided, right? Who braided your hair? I said, guess what? Now you can go get paid to talk about your hair, or even do a live video of them doing your hair. And I said, if you playing in the game, people go, oh, how? I'm going to say it's Allen Iverson. You see?
Yes.
But you got to think that way.
Yes.
And so I autonomize. This is for me. And what I really like to look, because again, the SID in me, you can, you said $10,000, but let's just say $1,000 a month from your local, your hometown restaurant.
Yes. Yes.
You see what I'm saying? I
Yes.
mean, or that's real simple stuff. But you gotta, but if you got these small little deals,
yes,
your athletic department doesn't have time. I know so many, and they're even going through the process. And I've seen, oh my goodness, I don't know how to say this, kids get gypped. Like one restaurant gives the women's a representative from a women's team a certain price, and then they give the representative for the men a double that price. But the girls actually do put the stuff on social media, and the guys don't,
and have a bigger following often. Yes.
Yeah, right. And I mean, come on, and the ladies can rack up. I mean, we can do. I don't look. You can tell I don't have lashes.
Yes.
I don't have wigs.
Nails. Yes.
All of that.
Yes.
And they can rack up with that.
Yes.
And that's why you just need somewhere to go. Yes. Some kind of clearinghouse, somewhere to go. Like, how do I do this? Even if they do it themselves, is there a boutique I can go to and say, can you just look at this contract and bless it and let me keep on going?
Yes. NIL is nothing different than that retired athlete that did great in their heyday, but then now they're sitting at home and the local, you mentioned cars, the local car dealership calls them up and says, well, hey, come work with us and we'll use your name, image, and likeness to help promote, because you're still a local town favorite and you're still hot on the radar. So it really has the juxtaposition to carry you from all the way from collegiate through your professional or semi-professional career all the way to your post-playing career.
Listen to this. So if you knew that you can make money now, would you be one and done? Would you stay?
No. Oh,
you
for
see
sure.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's, I mean, again, if athletic department will look at that, I may be if I can teach them how to go about doing it. Now, other thing that needs to be have a red flag. So yes, I want my hometown restaurant to use my name, image, and likeness. But we got to have some type of discussion. How long? Is that 60 months?
Right.
You follow me?
Right.
And it you know, and it's no different from, you know, on the professional side. They can have on their contract, if I make certain number of tackles, you follow me, then I can get a bonus.
Yes.
You need to have those kind of upsells. But see, a lawyer or someone would know to be able to go. I said, it can't be just have my name, image, and likeness forever and ever.
Correct.
You know, it needs to be certain things in here.
Yes, because that's been something they've been able to use. Well, this person who's now a professional athlete they've been able to use that college career and using it on I have so many guys tell me they're still using my image on the ticket.
Okay, where's my money? Where's my money? Yeah. You can't use it preparatory. Okay. It's not like that. You get leased 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
There you go. Well, oh my gosh, we are over on time. I knew this was going to happen. It's okay. I very much have enjoyed. I'm sure the folks tuning in are going to just get a great amount of information from this conversation. You definitely bring the business, which I knew you would, the business acumen, as well as all the other behind the scenes NCAA level sports, athletic driven, from that compliance and all of that side to really help cut through a lot of the red tape and a lot of the questions I think that people have. You definitely have answers to that. And so with that, we're going to wrap up and say thank you. And thank you so much for your time for today as we close this session out. Tell us where we can find you. Again, let's go back over your podcast and your magazine and all the outlets where somebody can get in touch with you.
Okay, well, I really like to talk on LinkedIn. So find me at Monique Aj Smith. If you have any questions about today's discussion and you are catching a replay of this or something, I'll be glad to try to direct you in the right direction. And that's why I like to begin the discussion.
Yes, very good. Thank you so much. And we look forward to you connecting with Ms. Smith on any level you'd like. She has a lot of wisdom and a lot of great takeaways that are going to help empower you in your NIL ventures. So be sure to get in touch with her. Welcome to this segment of the 2022 NIL Virtual Conference. This segment is brought to you by the Atlas Group, which is a new agency that is going to cater to athletes and helping you all with everything from, I would imagine, brand management to marketing to acquiring those deals that you're going to want to get in the bank, of course. And so today we have Mr. Cameron Scott that is going to speak with us a little bit about himself, his career, as well as his new agency that he and his partners have started. I'll give him about 30 seconds to give a good spiel of the Atlas Group. Mr. Scott, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Danita, thank you for having me, and happy to be on and talk to everybody. So yeah, just a quick rundown of Atlas Sports and Atlas Group. So essentially, we are an empowerment program and just a group of professionals from different backgrounds, from finance, from law, and from the sports professionals realm that have come together to help athletes empower their young careers, help athletes navigate a very, very interesting time in collegiate sports, a very wide open time, and a time where there's not too much structure from the institutions to the athletes. So we're just here to help athletes procure deals, stay in compliance within their state laws and their school laws and within the NCAA legislation. And on top of that, anything from tax planning, tax implications and whatnot, pretty just a encompassing 360 view of what today's collegiate athlete is. And on top of that, offer career advice, help with career placement, internships and whatnot. As I said in the beginning, an empowerment group to where we truly want to give athletes control over their young careers.
So I added in branding and marketing. Is that something that you all are going to focus in on? Because I really like the fact that you sound more like nuts and bolts, like the mechanics of everything, because I consider branding and marketing more fluff. So is that something that you all will have in scope of work, or will it just be more nuts and bolts?
Yes, so branding and marketing is included in it.
Okay.
I guess you can say it is the fluff.
It's the pretty part.
It is the pretty part. It is the pretty part. It's funny because it is, for the most part, the majority of NIL deals that happen from the branding and marketing side. But it is the fluff, because you can go tell a kid, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars for this car dealership, or X amount of dollars for this smoothie place or whatnot. And then the brand doesn't care about the kid's eligibility.
Right.
And maybe a kid's handler doesn't care. And sometimes the institutions, most of the times, really, the institutions are not involved, cannot be involved, and are not involved. So it's really on the athlete to stay compliant. And that's where we come in on the nuts and bolts and stuff. So yes,
I love that.
Is definitely focusing on the fluff part, the marketing, the branding. It's very important, but the back end stuff is the most important.
And I like that you're bringing that forward, because I think a lot of agencies right now, at least the ones that I've seen that have been promoting to athletes and their families, have been more on that fluff piece of, oh, we can get you this large deal and we can do this great piece of the visibility side. But like you say, it's the nuts and bolts that's going to get you a fine. It's the nuts and bolts that's going to get you on the bench or not eligible to play anymore, or whatever the penalties and stipulations, fines, whatever those might be. And so I like the fact that you guys are leading with that forward, because it changes the conversation in acquiring clients. Anybody can razzle dazzle with, look at all the beautiful things I can do for you. But if they don't have a strong compliance department of knowing what they can and cannot do for you, then you might be in trouble. Like, isn't there a team that recently was fined, or at least under investigation, for potential misdoings of the NIL? And so we definitely don't want to see you in that position. So I love that piece that you guys are bringing. Go a little bit deeper into the nuts and bolts piece, and how you plan to, not in grave detail, but how you plan to really master that niche of leading with the nuts and bolts first, and then following with the more beautiful pieces of branding and marketing.
No, without a doubt. So I think the first thing is with every athlete that we take on, it's an onboarding process, a whole onboarding process from to where we understand who they are as a person, who we understand their background, where they want to go in their future. And that helps, one, with the fluff piece, the marketing, the brand and whatnot. It helps us make a connection to the athlete. But at the same time, it helps us, mainly on that connection. On top of that, on the onboarding and branding, is each state is different. Each state is different. And in each state, each school is different. A school may have a very, and this is strictly just in terms of what the policy is, not on the actual politics of it, but like each school has a different NIL policy in regards to the NCAA legislation, in regards to the state legislation. So some schools have a very conservative policy to where they don't want you to use their logos, trademarks, facilities and whatnot. And some schools have a very liberal policy to where it's use anything you can. Get on campus, shoot on campus, do a commercial on campus, wear your jersey, wear this, just ask for permission. So those are the things that a student athlete necessarily may not know, or for the most part doesn't have the time to research themselves. So that is something that me and my team at Atlas Sports, we do. We research the We research the state law, research the school policy. We have a very good understanding of Alston versus NCAA within the Supreme Court as our basis. And that's where we go from. From there, it is educating the student athlete on NIL. It is familiarizing ourselves with the compliance department at the school if they're willing to have conversations with us. But then from there, it's starting to procure deals. And for us, one thing that's big for us is we don't see the big need to actually make money off student athletes right now. That comes in the empowerment piece. These are young adults, but still they're very young and they're still impressionable. And us compared to other agencies, we're not going to take a piece of your pie. We're going to help you create your pie, help you bake your pie, and help you divvy up the pieces into where you need to put it.
Right. That's a huge statement. Wait, because I got to clarify that, because people are going to be asking, like, what do you mean you're not going to take anything financially from that? So how does that work when working with you and the Atlas? I keep wanting to call you the Atlas Group. Maybe I'm like
it's
making
fine.
you
Atlas Group,
bigger
Atlas Sports.
than.
It's fine. It's fine.
I keep
that
like,
would be the dream one day.
Right. So
group,
Atlas
right?
Sports, how do you all plan? Walk me through that process of working with your organization then.
Yeah, to be honest, a lot of it is pro bono hours specifically to the athletes. We have different opportunities and different business ventures that we're consulting, marketing with different companies that we're pursuing and that we're in talks with and that we're currently in the progress of. But for the athletes specifically, we just personally, as four professionals that compose Atlas Sports, we just don't see it conducive to take money from collegiate athletes.
That's a huge stand to take. Let me just pause and say that. That's a huge stand, because where on one end, everybody has seen this as open the floodgates and, oh my gosh, now here come all the vultures of financial advisors and agents and here and that, descending upon these poor collegiate athletes. You're taking a completely opposite stance, which is going to be so welcomed and so refreshing for a lot of people to hear, because to me, that speaks true intent of where you're trying to take your company and how you're trying to truly help people.
Without a doubt. And it's the adage that, nothing is free, right? Nothing is free. And that is something that we are obviously always met with. A big thing with our onboarding process with our athletes is it's an empowerment program. We want to give this education to the athletes. We want them to be able to take control of their careers. And with that, we want their families involved, whether it's guardians, grandparents, whoever it is, we want their families involved.
That's good.
And every step of the way, right? This is not something that we keep this information and we tell you what to do. That's right. I call it the LeBron James effect. You can't get away with that with athletes anymore, to where you're like, take this contract, you're doing this. Take this. Right. You can't get away with it. Athletes themselves are businesses now, especially with NIL. So a lot of parents ask us, there's no way this is free. And it's like, look, this is our
hoax.
this is our passion right now.
I love it.
Passion. When we find a time to pivot into something different, we'll pivot into something different. But right now we see the need. There's a grand need for it, and we want to help be a solution.
And especially in the community that I know yourself and at least one other of your partners are involved in, which is the baseball arena. And so when I think of baseball, of course, I think of even younger than college. I think of the 13, 14-year-olds that are coming up, because that's how early, baseball gets early as even 9 years old. And I know football
earlier and earlier every year,
but baseball actually recruits at 15, 14, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. And so, and then I know from the independent teams of how these young men are living, where they're living with host families sometimes and don't have a nickel or a quarter to their name at some point, because they're really, truly all in about their passion of getting to the next level in baseball. So knowing that you're operating in that vein, not in vain, but in that vein, that makes all the more sense, because the more that they can have for themselves to help themselves transition as they are progressing in their athletic career, the better they're going to be holistically, right? Not just for
Without
this
a doubt.
time period, but that they'll have that money, and then your financial piece will come together and say, hey, let me show you how to progressively move this towards your next phase in this particular career, whether it's still in baseball or post baseball. I totally see how that comes together. So what type of help is commonly asked of you all, of the Atlas Sports Group, of Atlas Sports? What is the common thread of help that your clientele is asking for with the
It
NIL specifically?
Yes. So majority of the time it is, and pretty much 100% of the time it is, what deals can we find?
Mm.
That's it. All right, I can make money now. What
Yes.
can I do? What deals can I
Yes.
find?
Yes.
Can we get this? Can we get? I have a Buffalo Wild Wings on campus. I want to do this. I want to do that. Which is great. So that is the majority of the time. Sometimes athletes have no idea what they want to do.
Yes.
That's
part of your onboarding process, I'm assuming, of getting that all vetted out. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
is helping them understand. A big process of this is if anything, let's say you go as an athlete going to play professional sports after or not or whatever. This is helping you understand. This is a resume builder for yourself. You are yourself a business as an entity, marketing, selling, branding yourself. Obviously, with help and guidance through us or another agency or other people or family, but it's career experience for you that you can take on and in an interview say, yeah, you know what, as a collegiate athlete, I worked with these different brands. I helped start this campaign and this, that, and the third. These are the type of things outside of the other nuts and bolts, the tax planning, the compliance and everything that we want to help our athletes understand. So for the most part, it's either I don't know what I want, which is perfectly fine. As a 19 to 22-year-old kid in college when I was playing baseball, if I had this opportunity, I would have no idea what to do. I'd just be sitting on Instagram and be like, well, I like that. Where do I start?
Yeah, baseball players are often quiet people, I've noticed, of all of the sports. There are others that are way more demonstrative type of personalities, but most baseball guys are, you have your rare birds, but most of you guys are quiet. So I can see that as being a struggle of, what do I even do? How do I even do it? But I think the great piece to this is, as well, is because, and I've said this in just every interview and every conversation, every article that I've written, is this has longevity from the front of the career all the way to the end of the career, because now you see how to put together your own deals and use that marketing resume and that branding resume on the back end of your post-playing years, right? To where now you become the spokesperson for the local car dealership, or the spokesperson for in a more local, and it doesn't have to be, right? Because clearly Shaquille O'Neal is using his in a very national, international way.
Very true.
But
Very
it
true.
helps you really focus. And if it's done right, it helps you build a much longer profile for a more robust portfolio than just narrowing in on the NIL. So I'm hoping people catch that. And I'm hoping agencies like you, which it sounds like you'll definitely be in that vein of helping them with that longevity piece, and not just here for like that blip of a moment that they're in the collegiate arena. So how do you see the NIL affecting players and their potential?
I think off the top of my head, for players and their potential in college, I think the biggest impact, and us at Atlas Sports believe the biggest impact that NIL will have is on minority athletes, whether it's ethnic minority or woman collegiate athletes.
Yes.
That's going to have the biggest impact in the sense of, you now have an opportunity to get ahead on that we know there's so many different gender pay gaps in this country, and there's so many wealth and minority and ethnicity pay gaps in this country, you now have an opportunity to get ahead on that. In any way, it could be in a grand way, or it could be in a small way, but a couple tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars here and there that you can accumulate and do right by for yourself in college as a woman collegiate athlete or as a minority athlete, can set you up for if not large sum wealth or a large sum of financial stability, but set you up for the mindset of actually how to budget, how to allocate for when you do get your first full-time job. Like I've been doing this all 4 years of college. I know I've been getting paychecks in college. I know I can do this, I can do that. I believe in us at Atlas Sports, truly do believe that is going to be the biggest game changer in collegiate sports and how beneficial NIL is for those athletes.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of old heads, a lot of retired athletes. And, I asked them when I was early on writing my articles, and I would ask them about how they felt about NIL. And man, I wish I had. And just from the simplest things of, I would have been able to floss in front of the girl I liked even better, right? I would have been able to afford to take her out to eat, or been able to afford to buy my mama, whatever fill in the blank it is. And so even if it's just that small piece, and of course we hope to instill financial empowerment in that, where you're not just buying with it, but you're actually setting it aside and strategically growing it, right? But the real impact that it's going to have and that it is having is definitely real. And so with that, we're going to wrap it up. Brings us to the end of this particular segment. Cameron, thank you so much for being on with us today and talking with us a little bit about the agency side and what to expect in the NIL world. And we look forward to all the great things that you and your agency will be doing soon.
No, thank you for having me, Danita, and yeah, looking forward to see how everything progresses in this space and the help that us and all of us, you included. It's amazing what you're doing here with this, the help that all of us can do for these young athletes.
Welcome to this segment of the 2022 Virtual NIL Conference, brought to you by the NIL Network. And we're excited to have Michelle Myers in the house today, talking all things that your burning desire of questions wants to know about NIL and how to navigate it. And she is just she's my walking, talking encyclopedia. I'm always referencing her and her network. So if you have not connected with it, she's going to tell you exactly how to in just a second. I'm going to give her 30 good seconds to introduce herself, and then we're going to get into some great questions for you. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Danita. So name is Michelle Meyer. I founded NIL Network in November of 2020 as a hub of resources for athletes, coaches, and administrators to understand these massive changes that were coming in 2021 that I didn't believe enough people were really paying attention to. So I've been working on the website, and just kind of pulling together a bunch of different resources and things that I think people should read to understand this new industry. And as well, I started a new position in November at San Diego State University as their NIL coordinator. So I'm working in there to build the program, to help with the educational resources for athletes, as well as educate our community about how they can work with the athletes there.
Well, that is a lot of different veins to work in, but all similarly related. Obviously, they're all based in the NIL. So tell us the website for the NIL so we can directly contact you.
Yeah, so the website is nilnetwork.com. I also am active on Instagram, NIL Network. I have a Twitter also at NIL Network, but I wouldn't say I'm the most active on that social media platform.
No problem. We just want to make sure people can reach out with questions or comments, or just subscribe. Do you have a newsletter yet? Yes, there is a newsletter, because I subscribe to it. What am I talking about? There is a newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it brings to you all the latest information in NIL news. So you're definitely want to take that up as well. So let's start with, why do you think the NIL is important?
Yeah, so it's a space that I've covered pretty closely since about 2015, when the Ed O'Bannon case got settled. At that time, I was coaching beach volleyball at the University of Hawaii and looked at that and went, wow, okay, like this is finally coming to public awareness about how the NCAA really has been using, and not, when I say NCAA, it's the institutions, it's the conferences,
Right.
everyone kind of in that area that's been utilizing the name, image, and likeness of college athletes, since really the beginning of time. And I think that they've had, quite a few lawsuits against them where we lost the jerseys with the names on the back because that was really exploiting the athletes where they couldn't make any money. So after 2015, started following it pretty closely. When California passed their law in 2019, I was like, wow, this is really happening now. And this is going to be rights that college athletes should have had for the past decade.
Or more.
But especially with social media becoming so popular and social media influencing and these athletes having that celebrity status,
Right.
as well as even on the Olympic sport athletes, I look back to my rosters and go, my kids would have loved to coach private lessons in beach volleyball, make some extra money, because it really is, for a lot of athletes, they don't have any extra time to work any kind of real part-time job while they're on campus. So I think this is long overdue, and I'm so happy that it's finally here and that athletes are able to take advantage of it.
So other than the monetary impact, what's the biggest advantage for athletes to participate? Because I'm getting kind of, I guess, mixed reviews from athletes themselves in terms of, yes, we really love the money piece, but am I going to have to give up my privacy, or am I going to have to give up, other things that I hold near and dear to me in order to make this a reality?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to the individual athlete. And that's something at San Diego State, when I have athletes come in for one-on-one meetings, the first question I ask them is, what do you want to get out of your NIL? And is it all money-based? And that's a road that we walk down, which would usually be the social media endorsements, where yes, they will need to have a public profile and they will need to be posting and endorsing products, whatever kind of those requirements are. But if there's also other opportunities like building their network, having some like real life internship, resume building activities and things that they can take with them once they graduate. And if that's a priority for them, then, we can look more at the entrepreneurship side, coaching clinics, even connecting them here with some local businesses, not so much on, potentially the endorsement side, but even just to get in and understand what it means to grow and build a business in whatever field they're interested in. So I think NIL, what we see in all the headlines is always social media endorsements and
Right.
all the money, but it's so much more than that to me.
So let's talk about San Diego State and what you're doing there. What is the NIL coordinator doing?
All day in the life. No.
Are you the first? Because I always give you that credit. I'm like, she's the first to have that position, because I'm just excited and proud about it. So if you're not, don't tell me, because then it'll like totally shoot my balloon down. But
we'll call it the first in Southern California.
Yay, the first. That's all I heard. The first.
Yeah, so really, I mean, in my 4 months that I've been there, 5 months, has been building a strategic plan that I'm excited to get out kind of publicly, and what our program all entails. But really what I imagine the day in the life is a lot of education for the athletes. And most of that, we've incorporated some high level topics into our student athlete development program. So I've taught those classes about brand building, and then I did another one for their junior class about negotiating and deciphering contracts. And when I teach those courses, it's not really focused on NIL as much as, that student athlete development, the professional development side, which ties back into NIL. Personal brand, huge in the NIL space, but also now once you graduate out, somebody's going to be Googling you when you are applying for jobs. That's a reality that we live in, and looking at your social media. And so having a developed personal brand and really owning it for yourself is an advantage to have after you graduate as well. And then with deciphering and negotiating contracts, you kind of tied this in, but like the entrepreneurship side of NIL, with these athletes essentially being a small business in themselves, they're picking up these skills that they're going to need once they go and negotiate that first salary offer that they have, and to understand some different elements that they could negotiate for and what they should look out for in contracts. So even if they're not interested in doing NIL deals, or it's not something, that they want to put time into, I think these are still important topics for them to understand and to start kind of practicing with and gaining that real life experience while in college, so that when they get out, they can just expand on that. So that education piece. And then as well, I've kind of set up about 5 different, I almost call them like consulting sessions, because they're half-hour segments athletes can book in with me. You know, one's on building their personal brand, another on exploring their opportunities, another on figuring out, you know, looking at all the different service providers and what they want to utilize. So trying to hone in a little bit on like what is important to them, because I think in the first couple of months, I didn't get a lot of athletes in my office. And the farther I went down this road, I was trying to figure out what that block was. And they really don't know what they even need. They know they need help with this, but
Right.
it's a lot harder to walk into an office with someone that they're not that familiar with and go, okay, you're the NIL person. I need NIL, please. And you're like, okay, come on in, sit down. And so, you know, since I put that out a couple of weeks ago, I've got so many more kids that have just pulled that up. It links to my calendar. They can book in and come and talk to me with exactly what they want to talk about, which is awesome. So athlete education, and then on the other side, is really building the infrastructure. So making sure that the website has a lot of information, you know, our FAQs, we have our policy up there, some other resources for athletes, and just best practices and tips. And you go to the San Diego State website right now, it's not updated, but it will be on Tuesday when we launch the program. So I'm excited for that. And then finally, it's engaging with the community as well. It's educating our donors and fans about how they can now work with student athletes. It's getting in with their local businesses. I would love to do a town hall with the San Diego businesses and talk to them about some of these early campaigns in the NIL space and the type of ROI that these businesses saw from it. Because I think that that's another kind of blocker on that side, is they don't understand the power of working with student athletes, and that they actually are really, really influential within their own community, regardless of that celebrity type status. So that's kind of my 3 pillars, I'd say.
What do you see in the next couple of years in terms of continuity? Sort of like how the NCAA finally formed some level of continuity when it came to compliance and who can walk on the field, on the campus, or who can't. What do you think that compliance level or safeguards that are put in place, do you think it's going to come finally from a grander realm, or do you think it's going to stay more individualized?
Yeah, I think the NCAA is really hoping for a federal bill that will even the playing field across all the different states. Because I think we have, at this point now, and that's why everyone calls it the Wild West, there's about 25 states that have an NIL law that's effective. I mean, another dozen probably have it somewhere in the legislative pipeline, but really haven't put any effort to getting that passed, because they don't really see the point as much anymore. And an early trend, you know, over the past, or of 2022, over the past couple of months, was states started to repeal their NIL laws because they felt disadvantaged. There was more in their law restricting them than what was part of the NCAA interim policy. And so there was and I think that people are still advocating for this, but people are saying, you know what, all states should just repeal their NIL laws and we'd go by that, the interim NCAA policy until we can get a federal bill passed. And that's the quickest and easiest way to even the playing field.
Right.
That being said, though, the interim policy written the way that it is, you know, it doesn't have a lot of guidelines in there. And so what we're seeing now is people are just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And I don't think the NCAA has the power to really put more guidelines in place without potentially opening themselves up to, you know, those hundreds of millions of dollars of litigation. So
Yeah.
I know that they're doing some investigations right now, but really I think they're gathering information to take to our government, our federal government, and say, hey, this is what we need to go into a federal bill, which I don't even think that, you know, our Senate, House of Republicans will look at that until maybe this time next year, and maybe looking at a passing date at the earliest of next summer. But I would be very, I'll say not very surprised. I would be surprised if that gets passed in, you know, before 2024.
Because then who's this task force that's going to be out on the street making sure that all the NIL laws are being followed and the compliance is there? It's just top of that. Now we're compounding high schoolers. So we're allowing high school athletes to participate in certain states already in the NIL. What are some of the biggest questions that you're getting asked as an NIL coordinator from the students you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, most of the students that come in to see me, it's just even, how do I get started in this space? Because like you said, I don't know if it was rushed or the NCAA just like was so backed into a corner they had to throw out, all of their guidelines and just went as simple as possible. But a lot of the athletes didn't anticipate this coming at all during their collegiate careers. And a lot of them have actually been pretty disenfranchised by it, of just the way that the rules changed last minute. And then, of course, all the headlines that they see are the car deals. And this kid got $1 million, this quarterback over here. And they're going,
Right.
99% of athletes are going, well, this isn't for me. This is just for, those celebrity athletes. So it's been a challenge for me to, make them aware of the other opportunities there are around NIL. Like, let's say they want to keep their social media private. That's perfectly fine. Let's find a different route for you to go and to monetize and make some extra cash. Because again, I look back at my time at University of Hawaii, and like I supplemented my income there by running a little girls beach volleyball club on the side. So it was 6 to 8 years old, their first time touching the volleyball. They absolutely loved it. I loved it. And really it was, an hour and a half on my Sunday where I could make a couple extra $100 for the week. And not, again, life-changing money. And yes, it is work, but it's things like that that I think athletes can incorporate really easily. And some kind of community activations, whether it's coaching or going and even talking to high schools or clubs or things like that about their experience as a D1 athlete. But they just need some help to navigate that and to kind of get the wheels turning of, what that could look like. So that's probably the biggest challenge. And then also, I'm a big supporter of these third-party service providers, because I think that they add a layer of protection for the athletes in terms of they make sure that the deal opportunities are compliant, that they won't risk their eligibility. And they also vet the contracts to make sure that there's not that bad language in there. However, I think now on my service provider directory, I have like 330 companies, something like that. And so it's figuring out as well, what are their goals with NIL and what kind of platform would make sense for them to utilize. So walking them through kind of the different marketplaces and services available to them.
Yeah, and I was coming back to that robust directory that you do have on the NIL network. But one thing that I haven't heard a lot of is the philanthropic space in NIL and how those two come together. Tell us about that membership directory and who I'm on it. But tell us about that member directory and why it was essential to put that together.
Yeah, I think the service provider directory is really one of the primary reasons why I started NIL Network. I saw that this new industry was going to be created pretty much overnight. It was going to have a lot of money around it, and whenever that happens, it's going to be startup heavy and a ton of people coming into this. And just looking kind of historically at even our NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball athletes and some of the troubles that they run into via their sports agent or their financial advisor or whatever those kind of things look like. And as I started doing some research, I was like, man, these athletes are going to need a lot of help, because and potentially not even at just the college age, like our Olympic sport athletes, my background being in beach volleyball, they don't get any help. They don't have a players association to navigate who to utilize, who's good and who's not so good. And so I started pulling it together. Now it's not complete. I want to add, I'm working with an attorney to get like a proper vetting system in place to try to add another safeguard there. And then I also want to add a rate and review component to it, because I think that peer-to-peer share, when you actually have experience with these companies, is so much more valuable than just saying, oh, this company is great because they do XYZ. Like, are they actually delivering on the things that they're saying they're delivering on? So still work in progress and still coming up. But man, I feel like I find, probably another 5 companies every week because it's just growing so quickly. And again, there's in NIL, we have a main industry, and I think the sub industries, there's probably like 10 to 12 sub industries in that as well. So yeah, I'm excited to continue building that out and just making it available to athletes to sort through what's available to them.
And I think that's such a key component, because often we go with who's in front of our face. And so if the only people that we can see are those with the major dollars to spend on visibility, right, then that's where you will just happen to go. Do you get a lot of parents? Are you just solely working with athletes, both on San Diego State and with the NIL network?
Parents will always be part of the equation. I think at San Diego State, a lot of them right now are fulfilling that role essentially as their manager, especially when athletes are in season and can't really be, sorting through their DMs and trying to find these opportunities and whatnot. So definitely worked with a handful of parents at San Diego State, and through NIL Network as well. I think that I've had quite a few parents reach out, and not necessarily, those ones aren't as specific to like help me and my kid. It's more like I want to understand this and like what
Right.
opportunities are available for my athletes or athletes like them, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that it's still, NIL Network has been around for about a year and a half now, but it's still very much working on building the brand of it and letting people know that this resource is out there for them to utilize, because I think that it's still got a lot of room to grow.
Well, yeah, and it's great work, Michelle. I think you are right on target with what you're supposed to be doing for the community. I'm sure parents and athletes really appreciate the work that you're doing, because it is just very murky waters right now that everyone from athletic directors to coaches to parents to athletes and the opposite order are all going through to help make sense of it and to help themselves capitalize on it, because where, like you say, where they might not make $1 million or do have $1 million deal, that doesn't mean that you can't find $10,000 or $1,000 or a couple of $100 a week, like you say, that could really help supplement $10,000 is life changing for me, for a lot of people. So that could really help out. And I know the NIL network will do nothing but continue to grow. And with that, I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me a little bit about the great services that you're doing for athletes, for parents, to help universities, the athletic departments and coaches kind of have a better and easier transition as we figure out the legislature and all the things that come. And hopefully in the near future, hopefully less than 5 years, we can figure out a really good place where it's just kind of humming along now, and everybody sort of isn't with question marks over their head all the time. So thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. To find out more about the NIL network, you can find Michelle on Twitter, on LinkedIn, online at nilnetwork.com, correct? At nilnetwork.com, where she has a member, I keep calling it a member, she has a participant directory of different companies that can help you navigate through the NIL era as we have descended upon it, and it is in full gear and full blast. So we hope you enjoyed this segment brought to you by the NIL Network, and stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you.
And welcome everybody to this interview of the fabulous and wonderful Miss Brianna DeBose. So she is the author of the ABCs for College Athletes. And this is a fantastic piece. I just read it literally last night. I won't even lie. I've had it for maybe a week, and I read it all in one setting last night. And this is not a book for the week. So I'm going to do a short intro and then we're going to get straight into this book and pull out all the meat that you need to know. That does not mean that you don't need to go buy it and support her. But Miss Brianna, tell us a little bit about you and why you decided to write this fantastic book.
Sure. So in a nutshell, I played sports for 17 years of my life. So that's kind of like my sports cred, I guess. So, for the folks that are out there, played Division I basketball.
Okay.
I played Division I basketball. I went to two different schools, Virginia Commonwealth University and American University, where I ultimately graduated. And then I rolled into my career in grad school and doing research in this space, specifically looking at sports organizations, primarily like college athletic departments, how they're operating both from a financial standpoint and how they treat specifically Black women, Black female athletes. So I'm researching all this different stuff, but not a lot of people research or, read academic journals and things like that. So I felt like I had more to say, and I wanted to say it in a practical format so that I can get it to the group of people that I need to read this stuff and understand it. And so I was like, I got to put this in a book. And simultaneously, I was, creating this brand called Black and Ballin', and I was like, reels are cool, short 30-second, 60-second videos where I'm informing people about this stuff. But I'm like, I feel like I have more to say, still in a practical format, but more to say. So, I created the book because I just felt like if you have $20, you have no guidance, you have $20,
yes,
and you're a parent, a student athlete, an administrator, somebody, a coach, and you need to understand how this experience really goes down.
yes,
I got you. I'm gonna put you on game. Like
yes.
you said, you just read it all in one sitting.
Yes.
That's exactly what I
Yes.
wanted.
Yes.
And I was like, these are your building blocks to success. So
tell people
go.
where they can find the book Off Tops.
So Off Top, you can find it on Amazon.
All right.
Easy peasy. Amazon, search my name, search the book. It will come up immediately. And then you can literally just prime it to your house. It'll be on your doorstep in 2 days.
And that's Brianna, Briana, 1 N, no
1 N,
I in the last name.
Well,
Dubose, not Dubois.
D-U, yep, D-U, capital B-O-S-E.
Yes.
If you want to order bulk copies, because that is definitely like, I'm trying to land that large scale partnership.
Absolutely.
Say, like, I want to buy 500 copies or 1,000 or 2,000, whatever it may be. Then you can email me. You can find me at my website, briannadubose.com.
I love that. I love every bit of it. And I love some of the things that you say. The key word of the day is practical. Because let me tell you, the first thing that I thought when I started reading with this was I wasn't just transitioning from high school to college, and I should have had this, even though some of the pieces like G is for gear, and I'm not getting free Nike wear or free Adidas wear or whatever. That didn't apply to me as a non-collegiate athlete, right? But so much in the book applied to me as a young girl, a young woman going from high school into college, not knowing what to do, where to go, how to be. It just spoke so much power to me on so many levels, from the autonomy, we'll start with A, of oneself, to knowing oneself. And so I'm going to start with my third question first, because I'm in that vein right now of at 17 or 18, though, were you of the mindset to even feel this way of the confidence there of, I know I'm it, I know I have worth, I know I have the best of the best to offer? Do you feel like you brought that at that young age as a freshman going into college?
Honestly, I'm going to say no. That's why I put it in the book.
Yeah.
That's why I put it in the book, because like at that age, you're still seeking approval from others, right? You're still under the gaze of, your parents, your guardians, or your coaches. And you haven't really gotten to that point of like, wait, I'm enough. I can do this.
Right.
My worth isn't tied to how well I play that day, or, what I can physically offer, right? Like there are days where we aren't feeling it, and that's okay, because we're human. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I did start the book off like how I did. And, even with the work that I do now, because I forgot to say that, like by day, I'm a management consultant, and I'm working with businesses, and I'm also an advisor at Georgetown for their sport industry management master's program.
Nice.
And with the work, thank you. And with the work that I'm doing now, like I'm constantly reminded that, we are human. People fall short. When I'm advising my students and they're freaking out about, their papers that they have to do, I'm just like, it's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. And I feel like that's not stressed enough in college athletics. It's like, no, we're pouring all this money and resources into these 17 to 22-year-olds. And it's like, we need it now. And it's like, you're doing them a disservice by doing this. So much pressure.
And then on the other end too, of the non-athlete, there's that pressure as well, because now I'm spending all of it. It's in duality. I'm spending all this money on you because I'm giving you a scholarship as an athlete, or I'm spending all this money on you because I'm your parent and I'm paying for college. So quickly, I think you start coming into feeling like performance, right? Of I have to people please because these people have done me a favor, have done me a service, have given me money, are helping me. And so where, and we see this story play out so much, of where mommy and daddy want you to be a doctor, but you really want to be an art teacher, right? And they're like, no way, I'm spending $60,000 a year for you to be an art teacher or whatever. So I think all of that is so thick and meaty. I mean, we could probably go on forever and talking about the psychological preparedness for high schoolers, right? I mean, we're dealing with so many facets of the mind, the body, the spirit, the will, right? Of developing your own entity, of pushing into what you feel like you're called to be in life, of what your parents want, and all of those pressures coming down that, you know, eventually shape, which comes into some of the conversation that you had in the book of how even coaches are pushing that, of what the kind of player they want you to be. And I felt like it was such a good point that you made. Is it really in the best interest of you, or is it really in the best interest of them? And are they trying to push you and shape you into a two guard, but you really aren't in the most comfortable positions? You know, so the dichotomy between all of those layers that you're having to deal with, because ultimately, very early on, you're somebody else's. Absolutely. How would you feel? How would it have impacted your team and your relationship and yourself if you think you had come into this a little bit more Brianna in this book, as opposed to that 17, 18-year-old who had no clue how to be this?
Oof. I would have been rocking it. There would have been so many decisions that I would have done differently. Like, I've been getting that question a lot. Like, what would you have done differently? You know, what age would you want to gone back to? Like, you know, would you have still made the same college decisions? And lately I'm like, no, I wouldn't have. I would have really thought it through. You know, I would have thought, like, yes, I had, you know, high profile D1 talent coming out of high school, but was it necessarily the best move for me when I really, you know, really wanted to make the most out of my college experience? And so it's really hard to do that when you're a student athlete. It's hard to do that when they're taking up so much of your time, and you have to, again, please so many people and so many entities. I put it in business because people think everything's all sweet. Like, you just go to class and go to practice and go to games. No, you have to go to donor dinners. You have to make time to do community service. You have to make sure you're entertaining a recruit and giving them the best time of their life. And that impedes on your personal time. You don't have time for clubs. You don't have time to invest in yourself. My coach, my first year, was like, yeah, you can't intern. I'm like, so not only don't get professional experience, I got to stay here. I got to work out. I got to go to class. I have no life. So to answer your question succinctly, you know, if I had the resource that I just made, like, I would make some very, very different decisions, because that's why the dedication piece is so big in the book, right? I dedicate it to my 17-year-old self, but I also dedicate it to the 99% of college athletes who don't go on to play professional sports, and the first generation athlete, right, who has no blueprint, no idea, right? Like, my parents, they went to college, so I'm not talking about first generation in terms of college here. I'm talking about first generation in terms of first Division I athlete to go play sports. Like, it's a very, very unique situation. They have no idea how the game is played, within the game. And so, like, having a resource like this, like, could have easily saved my life, saved me a bunch of just pain and suffering.
Yes. So let's push over a little bit about the NIL and how all of that is potentially even pushing more on those relationships, because now money is involved. And, you know, people get funny when money is involved, right? So first of all, what is your NIL pitch, kind of elevator pitch, when people come up to you and say, oh my gosh, the NIL, you're a college, ex-college athlete. How would you have handled this if you were in the NIL era as an athlete, and what should I do?
First off, my social media would have been popping if NIL was like alive and kicking. I'm like, you know, I joke around with like some of my teammates because we're still like very good friends, like pretty much family to this day. And I'm like, dang, if we had this back when we were playing, like, we would have been in there, because we didn't even have access to like our photos proper promotion, none of that stuff. It was like, they used it for the games or for, seasonal calendars or things like that, but we didn't have access to any of those pictures. I'm like, or video. I'm like, all these kids got all this stuff lined up, all these different platforms. So it's really cool. But the flip side of that is that it's also really overwhelming, right? So my whole approach to NIL, and another part of my job at Georgetown is I'm on the NIL task force for Georgetown Athletics. So we're designing all of the curriculum. It's for a program called the Blueprint. We're designing the speaker series curriculum for a certificate program, and just overall like interactions with student athletes to give them that like holistic view of NIL. And so I get this question about it, and it's like, what's your viewpoint, Brianna? You're the former athlete, you're, resident expert in this stuff. And I approach it like a business. So with the work that I do simultaneously as a management consultant, I work with businesses of all different sizes, from small business to government. And I say, essentially, student athletes are running their own business now, right?
Yes.
Your brand is your business. And like, so you need a team. You need a team to understand the tax implications, the financial implications. You need to understand social media. But like, I also want them to understand that it's not all on social media. Like, name, image, and likeness is a wide gamut of things. And right now it's heavy into the social media. And I don't really like it, because I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, like Facebook and Instagram, everything like went out. It just went out one day. And I was like, wow, this is what it feels like with none of this today. And it just,
hello,
so
1980.
Much, just, right. It was just like less stress, and people were picking up the phone and just calling you like, what's happening? So it was just so nice. Right.
Yeah.
And so when we think about it in the large scheme, it's like, do you have something for yourself? Because what if social media just went out? Went out, just smooth out. Do you have relationships, right? Are you leaning on your network? Are you talking to alumni? Are you engaging with the local business community? Are you starting things on your own? Like, do you have your own video content or your own audio content, right? Because that stuff you can save, right? There will always be another platform, but will you have the content, right? If everything blacked out on Instagram and you said, oh, everything's saved on Instagram, what you do?
Might not be.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. So I approach it from the business standpoint. I'm like, all right, now you're deep diving into, maybe you want to start an LLC, right? Even if you're a solopreneur, because you do not want to pick up that personal liability for the business that you're running, right? You want to do the camps, you want to do all this cool stuff, great. But like, that comes with all these different things that are kind of going on. And also, do you trust those in your circle with your personal business?
Yes.
Right? That's kind of the other layer. It's like, do you trust, folks in your athletics department? Because right now everyone's leaning on the athletics department to be like, can you review all these deals? Can you do all this X, Y, and Z? But like, I guarantee your athletic director is not leaning on his staff or her staff to review their taxes or their business dealings or things like that. It's like, there's a reason.
Well, it's not their job. Like, that's
right.
That's not their job. So
it's not their job. And also, it's a difference. You should be able to separate business and like, professional life. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So just trying to get that in that little bug in their ear. 'Cause that's how I approach it.
And I think that's where we're all with it is a business. You have to make some hard, fast, determining decisions as the business owner. And one thing, I've been doing this for over 20 years, doing financial and business consulting. And one thing I will say about that is that most people get into business because of the passion, right? They don't get into business to be into business. So they're passionate about fill in the blank, baking cakes, making shoes, making, whatever. And they forget the little thing called being in business, which has to deal with marketing, brand promotion,
logistics,
all the logistics, right? The flow. And so that's why they come to me to help them determine all of that strategic planning and stuff. But just be aware of that little tick if you choose to enter into this, even if you're just a spokesperson, you're still in business. So, I think, and what I'll continue to say throughout all of this is, I think the NIL is presenting female athletes, especially female basketball players, the largest opportunity. I hope that you got something insightful and empowering out of this little short bit. Go out and get your copy of the ABCs for College Athletes by Miss Brianna DeBose on Amazon. You can go on her website, and we thank you for tuning in. And until next time, we'll chat later.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.